Well, you guys, I had a hair appointment today and my hair girl just canceled. So my hair was super blonde and I went in and had her actually raise my blonde up, and she toned it with a toner that was not it. It made my hair not super blonde. It actually made my hair like a light brown, and I was super unhappy about it. So she was like, let's give it like a week, wash it a couple of times, and we'll tone it. And she just texted and said that we're going to have to potentially do it tomorrow because she's going in for a COVID test. So, damn it. Thank you, Kayla, so much for helping. I appreciate it. Okay, so let me talk to you guys about kind of where I am. You know me, I'm super transparent. So, in 2022, we're just going to kind of continue with a lot of the live content. So you can come see all the behind the scenes. Jacob wants to participate more. He told me that he looked back on 2021 and I grew this business a lot in 1 year, and that, is there anything that he can kind of do to help me, that he was really proud and that, we had really expanded. And I told him that Facebook had given us our creator content based on it being like a Western lifestyle reality, like come behind the scenes. I'm a horse trader. Come see what we do. And yes, Alberta, I sure can. And Jacob said, you know what, is there anything I can do to kind of help? And I said, yeah, people would love to have some behind the scene contents at the sales. A lot of sale barns don't want you to video live because they don't want the narrative, they don't want the narrative that you see with the rescues where they're like, this poor skinny. But I told Jacob, it gives you the opportunity to actually change the way people see the livestock industry. Like when he goes to the sales, he can show you the stuff that's actually the truth. Without there being some poor me fundraising narrative. What I don't like about our industry is that the narrative for the last 10 years since I started doing this on social media, lots and lots of people started after me trying to emulate that kill, pin, rescue, like go save a horse or it dies. And I don't love that narrative. I don't love that like knee jerk pull at people's heartstrings. That's not what I'm about. Good horses sell, and horses that don't need to be sold don't need to be sold. So, I told Jacob that it's a really good time for him to be able to, it was weird. It was like a barbell with, a spoon and fork, and I couldn't figure out the correlation between a spoon, a fork, and a barbell. Sorry, I was trying to figure it out. See? Like the knife and fork. Anyway, trying to figure out like the correlation between my brain, ADHD kicking in. I'm like, Jacob goes to a lot of sell barns where he sees a lot of great cattle and goats and horses, and I hate the narrative, and I hate where people try to make the sell barns out to be bad. Does that make sense? They try to make, there's this skinny horse and it's standing in this awful sell barn, and the sell barns are not awful. They're auction barns. I mean, things happen with livestock that suck, but I don't ever feel like it is, like malicious. I really don't think people, for the most part, I will say I've seen people work at sell barns that shouldn't have. I've seen people work for me that shouldn't have. That like it only took about 1 or 2 times of them losing their temper for me to realize this isn't for you. But that doesn't mean that the sell barn owner or the sell barn as a whole is bad. Like there's bad employees everywhere. So my concern isn't, it's more so how the sell barn owners handle that kind of stuff. Like if you have an employee that hits the livestock in the face, like I saw a guy do it one time at a sell barn here in Texas, and the sell barn owner got on the loudspeaker and was like, we don't whack them in the face. Like, let's cut that out. Like, Now, the person that did it, were they in the wrong? Yes. And should they have been, told not to do it? Yes. But does that mean that they're just a terrible person that was trying to abuse livestock? Not necessarily. I think there's situations just like Brandon whacked Fame on the neck with his open hand. And I got a couple of messages about it. And I said, listen, I was standing there when it happened. You heard me tell him we don't raise a hand to them. Did Brandon have a right to hit him? No. Would Brandon ever hit him again? Definitely not on my watch. And does it make me not trust Brandon with the horse? No. I think that there's always situations Brandon has been to prison. Brandon is out of prison. Brandon is riding horses for me. But Brandon still has to sit with his emotions and learn that, it's okay to lose your temper and not take it out on anybody. It's okay to lose your temper and be upset and I've had to learn how to sit with my emotions. I'm the first one to get on live video and tell you how I feel. And maybe that's my therapy. Maybe that's what stops me from throwing hands. I don't know. But my point is just because Brandon did it one time doesn't mean that Brandon's an animal abuser. And he really didn't, he didn't take the rein and whip him, belly kick him. He didn't, lose his temper. Fame was running backwards and then kind of ran like he was going to jump forward, and Brandon reached out and whacked him in the neck. We all saw it. And I thought to myself, you've got to be fucking kidding me, And I hollered at Brandon and said, hey, we don't raise a hand to anything here, period. We just don't. And that's just the way the cookie crumbled. So I think that on social media, we see a lot of cancel culture where somebody does something that's not in our favor. None of us probably, think that it's okay. No, none of us want to see Brandon raise a hand to Fame. None of us. Not me, not you, not anybody. Brandon was frustrated when it happened. Brandon is young. The horse is young. And then you'll have people say, well, then you shouldn't have a young horse with a young person and it's a bad... How do people learn unless they're put in that situation? How do people learn to exercise their patience unless they're put in situations where their patience are tested? I don't have Brandon work with Fame when I'm not there to supervise. So it's okay to be frustrated at what you see. It's not okay to try to maliciously hurt somebody, their reputation, and their life over one thing that you didn't like, because it happens all the time, not on live video. So the one time you catch it on live video, let's not all pretend like any of us haven't been guilty. I can promise in my 35 years, I've raised a hand to a horse in ignorance that I shouldn't have. And you know what? I'm a better horseman now, and I wouldn't do that now. I can tell you now that at 35, I have the patience of Job, and people will tell you that no staff member of mine can tell you I've ever raised a hand to a horse. Now, does that mean I never have in the past? Absolutely not, I have. But I think that some of the criticism that I receive is that I don't try to be perfect. So I actually allow people to see that vulnerability to where they can now say, oh, well, she even admitted that she has whipped a horse. Well, I have. But I don't think it's okay behavior. And I think that we do the best that we can until we know better. And then once we know better, it's our responsibility to do better. Brandon is doing much better. And I think that the thing that I want people to see from following us live is that people do make mistakes. Brandon's been to prison. Elizabeth has been to prison. Jess and I don't have any felonies. Jacob has a felony. So what can happen when imperfect people just work really hard to be better people? Great things can happen. What happens when imperfect people start a business that grows into something huge, and we just all do our very best every day? And that's the thing is, Brandon is a fantastic person. I think a lot of him, and he has a lot of amazing attributes. Brandon also has spent the majority of his adult life in a state penitentiary. Okay? So we're not dealing with somebody that's had a cush life that, and I don't care what anybody says. I do not feel like the people that come to work with me that have worked other places have been treated fairly by those other places. They're often really wrongfully judged because they have a record. I don't want to talk on Elizabeth or Brandon's past or their felonies or their incarceration, because that's their stories that they're going to get to tell when they're ready. But what I can tell you is I mention those things because I want for people to understand that some people just need to be loved back to life. Like, Brandon doesn't need any of you to tell him he was wrong. He's been told that a lot in his life. People don't need to message me about how he shouldn't have raised a hand to that horse. Like, he open palm slapped him in the neck, and I can assure you fame has long since forgot, but there are people that didn't, and they've messaged me, and they've wanted to cancel me and cancel my page. And you know what? You can't cancel a bitch that doesn't give a fuck about your opinion. And you know, I'm going to tell them the same thing I'll tell any of you. If you see a moment like that and you don't agree with it, the chances are I probably don't agree with it also. But here's what we are going to do. We're still going to love Brandon, and we're going to teach him that that's not. Dylan's been coming. Brandon's been getting to see Dylan kind of handle some horses. Dylan was in the Navy, so also incarcerated, just in a different manner. Like, I think when you sell your soul to the Army, the Navy, the Marines, whatever you choose, like, it's a different form of being locked up. But there's a lot of structure, and Dylan probably has a lot more patience than Brandon, because of the way that they were handled and taught to have those patience. So Dylan will be great as a male figure that is great with natural horsemanship for Brandon to be able to see. And it's not a young, it's like, I'm 35 and Dylan is my age. So it's not like a young guy that, you know, is like a bad influence. He's like a very responsible, you know, adult, great structure. He's got a daughter. He's a fantastic father. Like, I can sing Dylan's praises. I tell people all the time that we laugh and tell people Lindsay is our sister wife. Well, Dylan would be our brother husband or whatever, like, just jokingly, but I really like Dylan. So what I am going to tell you though is that we're not going to cancel people in my life because of mistakes they make. We're not going to do that. And if that affects you or offends you or makes you feel like you don't want to follow me because I'm not going to fire Brandon because he whacked him on the neck, like, let me just tell you, like, that's, hang on, buddy, they're trying to get out, so let me let them out. What I can tell you though is that when I hollered, Brandon stopped, and you could tell he was like, shit, I shouldn't have done that. And he's never done anything but pet him and talk good to him, and because he learned in that moment, like, we're not doing that. And I've learned that once your patience get tested to a certain point and you start to lose it and then you have to restrain it, it's like your patience get just a little bit longer. Like, now Brandon actually has even more patience and is doing even better. Like, I can tell you that a couple of things have happened this week that I was like, and Brandon handled it amazing. And I was like, yes. Like, so I know his patience are getting better. His ability to just not be frustrated is getting better. And my question is, what kind of person would I be to judge Brandon for his past and to think for 1 second that somebody that has been locked up, that has been treated with disrespect, isn't a little bit hurt, doesn't have a little bit damage, and isn't somebody that's going to need a little bit of guidance themselves. And I am disappointed in people that feel like it is their responsibility to voice their opinion about my staff to me. I had somebody voice their opinion about Elizabeth using the N-word. First and foremost, Elizabeth is not white. Second of all, I don't use the N-word. If I choose to use the N-word, hell would probably have froze over. But I am a white 35-year-old female who has never been to prison and doesn't have any business using the N-word. Make sense? Like, I'm not racist, and for me, the N-word would probably be like a derogatory remark if it came out of my mouth, and it doesn't need to be said. And, but we live in a very sensitive society that desperately wants to cancel people over things that are forgivable. And Elizabeth is doing the best that she can. I mean, Elizabeth is a fantastic person. She's trying every day to become a good horse person that understands horses and has a lot of patience and kindness. With that being said, she has dropped the N-bomb a couple of times. But again, let's reiterate, Elizabeth is not Caucasian. She is not of the Caucus variety. She has been to prison where she was locked up with lots of women of color, different colors. We got some brown ones. We got some darker brown ones. We have some black ones. I'm sure we have some Caucus variety ones, some red toned, olive skin toned, whatever. And at the end of the day, if Elizabeth says, like, what's up, my... And it is not a malicious thing, you should do like I do and just ignore it. I'm not going to say it. Like, just because she says it, it's not herpes. Okay? So it's not, like, contagious. Just because she says the N-word, it's not going to, like, get into my DNA and I'm going to be dropping N-bombs. Like, let's just be very... Like, let's just be very open-minded here. Like, we're talking about somebody that has a really kind heart. We're talking about somebody who has overcome a lot in their life to be a great human being. Somebody who has my back through and through. And that N-bomb that she drops that has offended some of you to the core. And the funny thing is the offended are always 60-plus-year-old white women. And I'm like, Helen, you're offended that my little kinky-headed, beautiful Mexicano felon over here has dropped the N-bomb because it offended you because you are a 60-year-old white woman. I could understand if I had a 50-year-old black woman who said that she showed up to my property and Elizabeth was throwing the N-word around and it offended her. Like, okay, like, that might be a complaint. But, like, don't complain to me that in the background, Elizabeth walked up and said, what's up, my... No, and gave everybody a high five without a shirt on and was just having a blast. And now you're highly offended. And the only thing that you took away from all of that happiness was the N-word. Okay, Helen, thank you so much for not wanting to culturally appropriate or be racist. But I think that you're part of the problem, not the solution, because you are finding fault in something that you should just ignore. If you don't like it, just ignore it. There was an hour's worth of video and that word was 3 seconds and you're hung up on that. Like, you're hung up on the one N-bomb that Elizabeth dropped, as she's not Caucasian, as she's been in prison, as if Elizabeth feels comfortable using that word, it's probably because she has for a long time to lots of people that are of all races, and it never one time crossed her mind that it was derogatory or wrong. And we'll let Elizabeth decide for Elizabeth when it is time to no longer say that word. You know, like, well, Kimberly, you also probably haven't been to prison. You've been to prison, Kimberly? You've been to prison? You've been in a gang, like you gang banged with people, like, or like you're probably a white woman who had no business saying the N-word because you were not raised on the streets. Like, you were probably raised by a Karen in a home full of Caucasians who have no business dropping the N-bomb. Like, I too have no business saying the N-word and should be slapped if I dropped it. But I'm not Elizabeth. I've not been to prison. Okay? I am Caucasian. So let's just get realistic about 2022 real quick, and let me just let y'all know, like, we are not for the sensitive variety. I don't do drama, but when I do drama, it's because it's been dropped in my lap and then I'm going to blow it up. So, like, I've told people a million times, don't come for me unless you want me to embarrass you and I both. Leave my name out of your mouth unless you want a live video made about you to where I have an entire tribe of people to, no matter how many people agree with you, I promise twice as many will agree with me, and they will attack you. So, like, let's just not have drama this year. As most of you saw, there was a post on the 1st that said let's see if I can, I think the girl deleted it. She then posted it in the hate group. Basically along those terms of, I have been scammed out of $900. That's right. That's right, Lynette. I also think that we have to remember that let's also take a step back and take the actual drama out of the moment. The N word is just a word to Elizabeth, and it's an term of endearment for her. I say bitch all the time. I'm like, sup bitches? And if I were to call some of you a bitch, you would be highly fucking offended, but you're not in my friend group. You're not in my personal life. You don't have to want to be called a bitch if you don't want to be, but I can tell you, I say it to Elizabeth, and I say it to Jess, and sometimes I say it to Dylan and Jacob, and I'll walk in the room and be like, sup bitches? And not anybody in my life is even remotely offended, because it's just me. And if that offends you, you're just not my friend, and it's okay. Like, go the fuck on. So with Elizabeth, when she says that, we all just laugh, and we like give her knuckles and enjoy her, and there you go. Now, this next complaint that I have is with the drama. I have a group of women who I think are worthless. I think they sit at home and they virtue signal. If you don't know what that means, it's women that wish they could do what I do, but they can't because they just aren't me, and they're not that badass. And they sit in a group and constantly tear apart everything I do and discuss it. And some of you have joined that group so that you can see what they say. And I want you to know, I think as little of you as I do of them, because if you want to see what they say, you're just as bad. What I will tell you is Heather, who's now watching, is a moderator for me, and she has the entire list of people that are in that group. And we block you from all of my groups, and we ban you from my page. So you get an exit from my life. You don't get to be in that group and watch their narrative and also watch mine. You don't get to sit on the fence on both sides. So if you are in that group, or you have been a member of that group, you might want to remove yourself before you find yourself banned and blocked. Yeah. Because we will ban you, we will block you, we will remove you. I love Elizabeth. She's home with her family. I think she leaves the next day or two to come back, and she's fantastic. Heather is hilarious. Her memes are brilliant. She also does our YouTube channel. So if you haven't seen our YouTube channel, you can subscribe over there. Now listen. It is not okay, to ride the fence. There are going to be things throughout this year that I'm going to say or do that you might not agree with. And if you jump ship and you head over to the hate group, you were never truly a fan or a friend. Because people that love me are going to support me through my mistakes. Now, I feel the way I feel. You can feel the way you feel. But under no circumstances am I the kind of human being that will support you one day and turn on you the next. I'm just not that person. If I turn on somebody, it's because they have given me enough ammunition that they have pushed me over the edge. And I am a very loyal person. I think that one of the things that I despised the very most about a previous employee that is in that group is that she has a fake profile that she comments under constantly. It is not a real profile. She has people convinced it's a real human being, but I know who it is because of things that she said. It's very blatantly her. And they talked about the refeeding pen, and the narrative that she used was that I lock horses in a pen at the back of my property and only allow them to be fed grain, this much grain, and it's just enough to keep them alive, but they're starving. And somebody asked me, is it true? Do you keep horses in a pen at the back of your property and only allow them to be given this much grain? And the answer is yes. It's the truth. And that lady went, oh my God, you are a monster. And I said, well, why don't we stop and talk about the context of how the horses ended up in that pen to begin with? She said, oh, I can only imagine they bucked you off or they bit someone, so you're punishing them. And I said, no, that's called the skinny pen. And she said, so you can make them skinny? Is that like your form of like Auschwitz? Are you like a Nazi? Is that like a concentration camp? No. In fact, the fact that you would compare human suffering to horses is, first of all, disgusting. Like, humans before horses. But secondly, those horses came to me, body scores of 2 or below, and they would die if I fed them more than that from refeeding syndrome. And you can Google it. It's called refeeding syndrome. So horses that come to my facility, a body score of 2 or below, go into one pen where they have free choice hay, free choice water, but they're fed 3 times a day, this much grain each. And it's more monitored so that one horse doesn't steal 3 people's grain or, 3 horses' grain or however. But that is how that group is able to convince people that I am a monster. They will talk about something that has just enough truth that it's believable, but they will spin the narrative that I have locked horses into a pen at the back of my property where I only allow them to be given this much food because it's the skinny pen and we are trying to starve them. Well, that's just not even remotely the truth. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life, actually.
Hello, thank you for just Starbucks. Can I get started with you today?
I need a venti. I need a venti strawberry acai refresher.
Okay, venti strawberry acai.
Yes, I would like for it to be lemonade and coconut milk. No water.
Lemonade and coconut milk?
Yes, no water. Just lemonade and coconut milk.
Okay.
And then I want 3 scoops of matcha, please.
Okay, free matcha.
Yes, and do you have any of the, they're like the little, I should have come inside, sorry. They're by the register, and they're like the little, like, espresso candy bites.
Oh, the chocolate covered espresso beans?
Yes.
Let me go make sure. I don't have a button for them, so I can't really check inventory.
That's okay. If you have them, I want them. If you don't, it's fine. Just.
Alright, I'm gonna go check on them.
Okay. I should have just gone in. My ears just popped.
Okay, it's in my hands. Let me go
Thank
get it
you.
back up.
Yep, thank you. I'll see you at the register.
See you there.
Okay, sorry, trying to just rush. There's a huge line behind me. So, the next thing that I want to address is that we are a livestock business. So we are going to have livestock in. They're going to get hurt. Bad shit happens. Blah, blah, blah. I feel like in my lifetime, I've seen a lot of people say some really horrible things about me because they don't understand that we get horses in that are really thin. One thing that I have suffered in my life is being judged and being ridiculed because I had to be the villain of somebody's story because they needed to fundraise to keep their rescue doors open. And it is such a shocking, heartbreaking thing to live through. Like, at this point in my life, I will tell you that I am in a much better place than I used to be. But I went through a phase in my life where I thought I was ruined. I thought that, like, I didn't, that I was being accused. What was the hardest for me was I was being accused of things that I didn't do. That was the hardest part of this, just so you know. I was accused of things that I did not do, that I had nothing to do with, but because it was said online, people believed it, and I was receiving hate mail and phone calls, and this was not recently, but that hate group is no better to me. And there was a time in my life to where, before Tinley, to where Jacob will tell you, I was in a really scary, dark, miserable, couldn't get out of bed, depressed place, because there were things said about me on the internet that were so awful, and there was two sides to it. And because of that trauma, I am really quick to anytime there's drama, I'm going to get online and tell my side of the story right away, and I have a huge following that will defend me. But people would say, why would someone do this to you? People don't just say these things unless they're true. Yes, they do. I've had rescues tear me apart because they needed a villain. Because they couldn't say somebody dropped the horse off at the sale barn because people wanted to go after the owner. It helped them to fundraise to have a villain in their story. And they would say, this horse came from Thompson Horse Lot and it is this thin. And, you know, then their following of people would donate money, but they needed to have a villain. There needed to be a villain who had done this. We had a rescue purchase 19 horses from Jacob. They were emaciated. The rescue told Jacob that they wanted to buy a group of colts that he had so they could fundraise. So they did some fundraising for them, and they didn't really fundraise that much money. Jacob came down on the price, maybe to like $250 each on these little yearlings that were like starving almost to death. But Jacob just wanted them gone. He wanted them off the place. He knew that they were going to be really hard to refeed, and there was a lot of them. When this rescue came to get them, they stuffed 19 colts in 2 trailers. Like 2 bumper pull trailers. They put like, I want to say they put like 8 or 9 in one, and they put like, I want to say they put 10 or 11 in the other. And they were bumper pull stock trailers. And when I tell you that they were crammed so tight, they left Gary's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 2 in the morning, so 12 hours later, they were only in Shreveport, which is only 2 hours away. So why it took them 12 hours to go 2 hours, I will never know. It was the middle of the summer, so it was 110 degrees. So if they loaded in the middle of the afternoon, loaded too tight. They said that they kept getting down on the trailer, and they had to like go part way, find somewhere to unload them because they stuffed them in there too tight. And then people were blaming us. They were like, you shouldn't have let them load. You should have told them that was wrong. People were blaming us for that rescue's actions. One of them died, got down on the trailer and got trampled by the other horses, overheated, got down. They drug it off the trailer and left it in a gas station parking lot outside of Shreveport, Louisiana. Well, when the state picked the colt up, the dead body, they ran the microchip because everything in Louisiana has microchips. Well, the microchip came back to our vet, and our vet said, I microchipped that horse for Thompson's. They tried to say that we dumped a dead horse in the parking lot. They ended up having to pull their surveillance videos. They ended up finding that it was the rescue's trailer. They had the license plate. The lady, she ended up, she actually, thank God, just so you guys know, thank God, it ended up sparking an investigation into her that ended up ending her rescue. They ended up finding hundreds of dead horses. I'll just show you guys. But nobody ever followed up. Like I did. I followed up because I wanted to know what the hell was going on. I wanted to see what was going on. But let me just tell you guys. Hi. Oh.
Go ahead, you actually paid for yours, so here you go.
Oh. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. My espresso beans?
Oh, right.
Yeah, but if I need to pay for those, that's fine. Do I need to pay for those?
No, they already paid for it.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was so nice of her. I let the lady in front of me cut because she had come in the wrong exit, which it happens, so she paid for mine. Thank you. So that was kind of her. Very kind of her. All right, so I ended up having a horrible vendetta against this fucking rescue because after they picked those colts up online, people kept saying things like, these horses came from Thompson's. Like, there was a lady in the surveillance videos, it must have been Tara. Like, I was literally
being accused of being the one that left the horse in the parking lot. Like, my reputation was being, like, shamed. So then that sparked people being able to feel like I was a monster. So then, for like a year after that, at the drop of any hat, people would like attack me for anything. We had a skinny horse online. I must have done it. Like, this is why you shouldn't be allowed to have horses. It was like mob mentality. Does that make sense? Like, it was just horrible mob mentality because, like, I had been blamed for that. Well, actually, let me just tell you. The horses were purchased by a rescue called Scarlett's Legacy. They were picked up from us and taken to a rescue called Scarlett's Legacy that had moved to Texas. When I end this video, I just want you guys to Google Scarlett's Legacy. And you can see that they ended up confiscating hundreds of horses. What the lady was doing is she was fundraising for hundreds of kill pen horses a month. Hundreds. Taking them to her facility, giving away what she could. But she was just fundraising and fundraising and fundraising, and she had like round pens set up with like a round bell in the middle. The problem is she had like 10 or 12 horses in every round pen. They found 50 something dead bodies, maybe like upwards of 70 dead bodies. But that colt being left and them tracing, so they asked me not to speak up. I get a phone call from the police that are like, we know that you're being blamed, but here's the thing. We actually know who left the colt. There was surveillance video. And I'm like, they're literally saying that I'm going to catch felony charges, that the police are investigating me. And of course, all it said is the police are under an investigation. So everybody just assumed it was me. So then, when it was posted that an arrest had finally been made and that horses were being confiscated, people started blaming Jacob and I. Like, the news drove out to our place and like wanted to take pictures, and they were like, where are the police? And we were like, what do you mean? They were like, we were tipped off by an anonymous source that there was an arrest being made today and horses being confiscated. And I was like, not here. And this is the problem with reality, is in reality, we sold the horses to a rescue. A rescue did that to them. Online led everyone to believe that it was Jacob and I, but the rescue got caught. The rescue got shut down. The rescue had all of their horses taken. The rescue lady had all these felonies, all these accounts of felony charges. Like, it was really a big deal. But because that didn't suit the vendetta and the narrative of all the people that had been blaming me, instead of them just saying, like, Tara, we're really sorry that we did this to you, we were wrong, they just quit. They just didn't talk about it ever again. Like, nobody ever went back and said we were wrong and Tara didn't do any of this. Like, it was all a lie and it was this rescue lady. They had so much pride, they would rather just bite their lip and, like, never talk about it again. Like, it was just easier to just pretend like it never happened. There are still people out there, though, that, like, don't have a clue, and they'll be like, you're an animal abuser and you have criminal charges. And I'm like, have you ever pulled my record? Have you ever pulled my record? It's spotless. It's spotless. I've never been arrested for anything. I've never been to jail. Like, I have zero criminal history. Nothing. Like, I'm actually a pretty fucking great upstanding citizen, but thank you so much for the accusations. And it was crazy because it was people, like, in the barrel horse industry that had known me. And because they knew my name, they got totally invested, you know? And then literally when it came out that, like, it wasn't me and it really had nothing to do with me, and, like, my husband had sold those horses to a rescue and the rescue was to blame, nobody wanted to say anything. Everybody just got really quiet. So what I want for 2022 is to just be able to show you guys the flip side of the agriculture industry, the really good parts, the parts that aren't perfect, but that's just how we do things, and we always have pretty good outcomes. You know? Like, to me, that's like a thing. Like, why can't their staff are wonderful people with families, and why can we not change the narrative of the livestock industry that it's not all abusive and it's not all bad, and that anytime animals are involved, any of you guys that have had a dog and it peed in your house and you spanked it and then later you were like, man, I feel bad that I spanked my dog, you know, I mean, every single person watching this video can be accused of doing something maybe in that moment that they should. Okay, so my biggest thing is, though, I want to just spend this entire year letting all of you guys know that it's okay to not be perfect, and it's important to just do the best you can till you know better, and then once you know better, to do better. But it's not okay to cancel people, or I see people canceling people for things that happened 12 years ago. Like, do you think I'm the same person today that I was 12 years ago? Absolutely not. Like, I'm not even remotely the same person. I don't even have it all the same values, or my moral compass is completely different. I probably would say that back then I may have been a little better person because I sold privately owned high-end horses, and so I felt different about livestock. You know, now they're as is with no guarantee. 12 years ago, I would have guaranteed anything I owned because I rode it, I loved it, I trained it, I had put months and months and months into it, and now I can tell you, you buy livestock from me like I buy livestock from the sale barn. They're as is with no guarantee. The only difference between what you're doing and what I'm doing is, at least I show you a lot of behind the scenes of the animal and show you videos of the animal, to where when you buy at sale barns, you get like a 1-minute snippet in the ring and that's all she wrote. You get to make your determination on if you're buying that horse or not off of a 1-minute 10x10 ride, you know? And at least we ride them out in the open. Dylan him and his grandpa built a bridge. We also have some other obstacles coming that we're going to start working with the horses through to really try to figure out what's trail safe. And there's just a lot. There's a lot of great things coming because I want to do what's best for the horses. People that follow me want to buy horses that need them. I wouldn't follow me if you feel like you need to buy the perfect horse, or you're going to be super upset, because there's no such thing as a perfect horse, and I'd prefer people that are expecting perfection to come to me maybe for some knowledge, but not to purchase, because you're not my kind of customer. The horses I sell have been through a lot, and they're just like my staff. Like, my staff are fucking fantastic. Like, I have people tell me all the time, oh man, I am so jealous. Like, where did you find your staff? And I'm like, prison. They're like, ha ha ha, and I'm like, I'm not laughing. Like, prison. And they're just like, I'm like, well, I mean, you asked, like, okay, like, I mean, that's the difference. I have the amazing staff that I have because I found imperfect people with really good hearts who will do anything in the world for us, and have the great work ethic and really want to overcome everything they've been through to do better. Like, they're fantastic, and I don't judge them, and I can openly kind of talk about the situation. I'm not going to talk about their stories because I want them to tell their stories. I'm going to do podcasts with each of them and let them kind of talk about their stories because they have really good ones worth telling. But they've spent a lot of time with people telling them, you know, not to talk about it, and, to be ashamed. And that's just not the narrative. Like, the horses and the people in my life are imperfect, but they have so much to give, and they can be the very best that you would ever have if you just give them the chance. And that's how I feel. I feel the same way about horses that I do people. I mean, it doesn't matter where they came from. They just need an opportunity to be the best of their ability. And I tell people, you can't shame people into doing better. You can't shame people. Like, the worst thing that you can do is to force somebody to be the monster that your narrative is trying to portray them as. Like, if you're making me out to be a monster and you push me and you push me and you push me until I react in a manner that suits that narrative, I'm not the monster, you are. Because you cannot shame people into being better people. See, shame and guilt and ugly words and being ugly and starting hate groups, that doesn't change a person's heart. That makes a person bitter. That makes a person petty. That makes a person fight back. That makes a person go into fight mode. That is a terrible, terrible thing. And if you're the kind of person that partakes in that, you're a fucking villain. You're a horrible monster, not the person you're talking about. I've learned from having the people work for me that I have my whole life. My dad has always hired people that other people were like, oh, I can't believe. My dad would hire people that people would be like, why? Why would you do that, Greg? He came by here and told me he's been to prison. What does that have to do with shit? Like you're going to be mad at somebody that they did wrong in their life? Like, let me tell you, we only get one life. And it's about the experiences we have. And some people didn't get the start that some of us, hell, I had a great start and I was still a fucking rowdy teenager and a really, really rowdy 20-year-old. I would say I was 25 before I even had my fucking brain turned on. So knowing that, the only difference sometimes I think in people is sometimes the difference between me and them is they got caught and I didn't. And it doesn't mean that I did bad things. Good people do things they shouldn't do. I dated a guy that was a gang member. Like, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, I thought I was a badass. No, I was a fucking dumbass. Like, I was a fucking dumbass. Like, come on, y'all. So you just do the best you can till you know better. Sometimes the world can allow us to believe things in a manner that it's wrong, you know, but society, like, listen to rap songs and watch videos and, you know, as a kid you get this impression that like